We'll get started here. I think we got about as many participants as we're going to get. We never can tell. Now, I hate to admit this, but I actually forgot the official title of tonight's meeting. So let me have a quick look at our upcoming events. And it's what does the first day of home education look like? Oh yeah, I put it in the chat there. You should be able to see it. And we have the honor this evening of having someone else do the talking other than Léo. But before we get started, I want to introduce you to, well, I shouldn't say some of my favorite people, but they kind of are because I work with them all the time. And these are the folks that make Education Unlimited what it really truly is. I'm going to start with Dr. Michael Wagner, who's going to wave at you here. And he is our executive assistant, and he has got so many jobs on his job description that we'll just leave it at executive assistant, and we're very, very happy to have him on our team. And on one side, I don't know, probably your order is different, but I've got Crystal, who is one of our facilitators, and she is kind of occupying the northeast, and Fort McMurray. And then to the other side of my screen anyways, we've got Sharon Bavard, who waved to us, Sharon, and she's kind of getting a big chunk in the middle of the province. She lives in Lacombe, and she's also one of our facilitators, and we're happy to have her on board. We have Isla, who just came down from the mountain. I was so envious. I wanted to be there myself, but anyhow, we had a nice visit yesterday. And Isla also is our facilitator, and she's a traveler. She does a whole bunch of stuff in and around Calgary, all the way to Banff and around, and then she gets in the car and drives all the way to Grand Prairie, where she has become our principal facilitator in that area, maybe the only one in that area. Time will tell. And I'm going to introduce Marianne. Marianne, you're going to wave to us. And Marianne is seriously considering joining us, and we are delighted at the possibility that she will be there. She has actually been joining us for a very, very long time. But, you know, 8 children, kind of, is it 9? Sorry, lost count. 9 children keeps mom pretty busy, and she's decided to look into joining us and becoming a facilitator with us in the southern part of the province. And I think that's all. And last but not least, I'm going to introduce the star to this evening's presentation, and that is Mr. Gary Wiens, who is the one standing in front of the mountain that Isla just came down off of, right? and he is, this was his idea. He was saying that there's so many people that start home education, and this year we have so many brand new families, and he says you need to address that. And I got overwhelmed. I thought, huh, what can we talk about? Because everything matters. So I just got a good idea. I flipped it back to Gary and I said, you do it. And that's precisely what Gary has done. So he put together a video. And of course, you'll see that's much more professional than what we usually do, because he is also our video editor. And so he always tries to put a little bit of a professional spin on things. So without further ado, I am going to go into screen sharing here, and we're going to watch a video. It's about 18 minutes long. I have to admit, I really got frightened today when I first got that thing. He's fooling around with the video, and he put a 1 in front of the 18. So I'm thinking, an hour and 18 minutes, like, wow, he's talking about everything from grades 1 to 12. Anyway, turns out there was an 18-minute video. I've already seen it. It's wonderful. And so without further ado, we'll play it for you, and we will catch you at the end of that video. Enjoy.
Often in home education, we discuss the why of home education in our presentations, but not so much the what. There's a good reason. As I discovered trying to condense this discussion, it very quickly becomes enormous. You take all the information, which is expanding exponentially, combine that with the variety of students, their unique talents and interests, mix in some family dynamics, and you get an unfathomable number of combinations. This is what confronts parents as they contemplate what might fill their home educating days. It is overwhelming and understandable that the cookie-cutter, one-curriculum-fits-all approach of the government schools may have some appeal. So, how do we make this manageable? How do we curate the superior, individualized program? The overriding principle is keep it simple. You don't have to do it all. To sum this up, find what fits your family and disregard the rest. That bears repeating. Find what fits your family and disregard the rest. At Education Unlimited, we want you to understand that as parents, undertaking a parent-directed learning approach, you are empowered to do exactly this. Find what fits your family and disregard the rest. I trust you are catching the theme here. That's right. Find what fits your family and disregard the rest. You have the God-given authority to approve and disapprove what is going to be in your child's life. You are simply exercising it. May I suggest some filters that will help with the process? The first filter is your family values. You need to talk about and identify what are your values and priorities for your children's learning. Writing them down is helpful. This is often expressed as a worldview, how you view the world. Now, if something doesn't align with your list, it can be disregarded. If Marxism doesn't fit your values, materials that present it favorably can be disregarded. You have a theistic approach to life. You can choose materials that support the existence of a creator. Your choice. The second filter is a list of skills you anticipate each children will be learning. What do they need to learn for their life? There are some basic skills that most people would agree on. The ability to read and comprehend a newspaper, the ability to balance a checkbook, or the ability to drive a car. Try to list these as skills, not subjects such as math. Identifying the actual life skill is more directive than a general subject area. It also helps to identify a variety of approaches that may be used to learn the skill. For example, there are a number of ways to learn how to balance a checkbook. As our children mature, these skill sets become more unique. A pilot will pursue a different set of skills than a farmer or a teacher. Remember, find what fits your family and disregard the rest. As we try to identify the skill sets that are applicable to our children, we can very quickly become constrained by the subject box. It is what many of us have grown up with. We need to learn math skills and science skills, etc. To avoid this trap, some different labels that reflect the world we are living in are helpful. This list includes foundational life skills, communication skills, culture skills, construction skills, competition skills, and creativity skills. Foundational life skills. What are the character traits and foundational values that you desire your children to embrace and defend? Often these are hidden or ignored in the government system. It is profitable to identify them. Thinking through the big questions of life helps us live more meaningful and purposeful lives. This is a time of learning and responsibility. Second set of skills are communication skills. What are the communication skills they will require? Do they need to read technical journals or the newspaper? Do they need to express their ideas one-on-one or to a public audience? Do they need to write a letter to their grandmother or be able to write a novel? Do they need to speak more than one language? About cultural skills. This is awareness of the other people around us. What motivates people and runs the economy? An understanding of how to interact with our world is crucial. Can they identify a bad character, a good trade? Do they understand the difference between what is legal or fair? Do they understand the purpose of law? Can they apply lessons from history? Current events can be a wonderful conversation starter in this area. For their construction skills, this category is vast and can encompass baking a cake, to building a skyscraper, to laying out a spreadsheet. It involves organization and design. It involves how things work and interact. It could be painting a picture or playing the violin. You start with the basic materials and finish with something more complex. For your competition skills, this involves games, sports, and various activities. Learning to be a good winner and a gracious loser. Learning one's strengths and weaknesses. Goals are set and evaluated. And finally, your creativity skills. This is not imagination. It takes effort. This is understanding the parameters of reality and combining ideas and materials to produce something meaningful. This is the ability to problem solve and come up with unique, workable solutions. Logic is also an important skill in this area, as it gives shape to our thinking. Let's include memorization as well. Whether it is math facts, Bible verses, or nursery rhymes, this memorized information often becomes the building blocks of our creativity. Be careful this list does not become a wish list. Keep it practical and short. It can be adjusted as you and your children progress. Projects are a good way to incorporate these skills. Now we have covered the filters of family values and skills. A third filter is, what are your children's interests? Why spend time learning things that we don't love? That increases the potential of spending a life doing the things we don't like, because that is what we learned. Helping our children become proficient in the skill sets they love increases the potential they will find work and satisfaction in these same areas. A fourth filter you will need to consider is, what works for your children? How do they learn? If they are a reader, books are great. If not, perhaps you need more activities and tutorials. Now that you have identified their skills and interests, look for or create activities that introduce and embellish these skills and ideas. Games or variation on games are often helpful. There are also many tutorial resources on the internet these days, or perhaps you can find a mentor, a local artist for your painters, or a local mechanic for your tinkerers. If they are verbal learners, include time for them to talk and discuss what is on their heart and mind. The final filter is your budget, remembering that packaged materials and curriculum generally cost more. The items that are readily available around you in life are often the most effective and the least expensive. These filters will put an end to the endless list of resources. You can now use your filtered list to search for specific resources, selecting resources that meet your top priorities first, and fill in from there. It is much easier for others to offer assistance if they know what you are looking for. Specifically, asking for a math program is usually not very helpful. However, requesting materials that promote a biblical worldview that will teach how to fix a motor to an avid reader that wants to start his own business will yield results. Don't overdo it and try to fit in too many things, or do something because someone else is doing it. Remember, find what fits your family and disregard the rest. Now, you have defined your family goals, identified the uniqueness of your children, and gathered your supplies and resources. The inaugural day has dawned. You have awakened your little ones and have just cleared the table, having finished breakfast. You look into their questioning eyes. Now what? Start small and add only as needed. Start with the foundation, the books that deal with life values and character, the books that answer the big questions of life. One of these is the Bible. You simply pick it up and begin to read. After all, it is the greatest textbook the world has ever known. Perhaps you are in Genesis, John, the Proverbs, or the Psalms. Pick portions that are appropriate for your family. Have the children take turns reading. Ask questions or point out the teachings about life. Help them identify reality as opposed to lies. You may ask a catechism question or two and have the children respond. Look at the world map or a map of the Middle East you have pinned to the wall to identify the geography. Identify or place the events on the timeline that you are creating. Have pinned to the wall or have handy on a pamphlet or on your tablet. Take your time. Enjoy your children and their questions. When you are done, you are done. The time frame is flexible. Sing a couple of songs to reinforce the teachings you desire for your family from the songbooks and hymnals you have placed on the shelf. Perhaps you have collected some visualized songs for your younger children. Let them manipulate the visual. Take some time to pray for one another, your community, leaders, and the world around you. Perhaps you are creating a prayer list in a booklet or on your tablet, and you make your first entry. Or perhaps you have assigned one of your children as caretaker of the list. Later in the week, you may add a memory verse or talk about a missionary and the country they serve in. If your values don't involve singing or prayer, perhaps you write a letter to a family member or a local politician, thanking them or offering your suggestions. Whatever is your way to make the world a better place. Now, simply proceed with the other resources and activities that fulfill your family's life goals. You have covered foundational life skills. Now work towards communication, cultural, construction, competition, and creativity skills. Create your own schedule. Remember, it is flexible, and progress is the measuring stick, not someone else's standard or ideas. Find what fits your family and disregard the rest. You have the authority. You are in control. Enjoy your family and the life God has granted. I thought I would conclude with some snippets of what may be occurring in various homes as they progress through their day. John and Rhonda will be going through the Phonics Pathways activity book together. They will be learning their phonics sounds and rules as they work through the activities. Today they will be working on their short vowel sounds, tracing, identifying, and saying the sounds. Tom is going to be working on his spelling. He is creating flashcards for common words he is using. A Google search has provided a list of common sight words, so he has a preliminary list to work from. He is using lined recipe cards and copying the words from the printed list, off of a tablet or from the whiteboard. Using colored pencils, he can decorate and illustrate the words. As time progresses, he will look at, say, and spell the words. Later, he can be timed to see how fast he can read in a set number of words, and then how fast he can spell them without seeing the visual. He will add to his cards as he learns and retire others. Meanwhile, a younger sister is playing with the foam letters on the refrigerator, placing them in order after her brother so kindly mixed them up, and is now playing with his tractor on the alphabet mat on the floor, driving from letter to letter and making their sounds as he does so. Sue and Nathaniel have taken out their first curriculum modules from Accelerated Christian Education. They will simply proceed through the modules as they gain mastery at their level of learning. Marcy, an avid reader and wanting to be a writer, is busy sketching out an outline and developing characters for her new story that she has in mind. William is working toward an apprenticeship, so he begins on his apprenticeship modules. This will keep him busy for the morning. Samantha is wanting to study medicine and is working on college-level anatomy and chemistry courses. Tom has finished with his flashcards and takes a break to play trucks and tractors with his younger brother. A plate of fruit is set on the counter that is quickly devoured. John and Rhonda have started on the Horizons math curriculum workbooks. They will need the instructions explained to them. Tom takes out a set of 3 6-sided dice. He shakes them and then places them in a row, writing down an addition equation and the sum in his math notebook as he adds them together. His goal is to get 20 correct in a row. When he does, his reward will be a tape measure like his dad's. Each set of 20 is checked as he does them. As he gains mastery, he will add 10-sided dice to his exercises and eventually the subtraction, multiplication, and division operations to the equation. As he progresses, he will be rewarded with other adult measuring tools. He also logs on to Extra Math online to work on his subtraction math facts. Finally, he takes some geometric shapes and tries to fit them into some puzzle pattern outlines. Nathaniel has moved on to doing his teaching textbooks math tutorial program on the computer station, while Sue is working on Math UC, a hands-on math curriculum. They work through the placement test offered by the curriculum to establish their level. Marcy is still working on her story. She will work on her business math first thing tomorrow before continuing with her writing. As they finish off their language and math lessons, the children move to completing their daily chores before lunch. This is a great time for chores, as lunch is a great motivator to finish them. After lunch, they engage in some conversations concerning current events, listening to and reading some news sources. This is a time of discovering history, law, logic, and geography. It has a focus on how people live. It is the exploration of culture. The family shares their thoughts on how to interact with the current affairs. They listen to a history audio series called The Mystery of History, completing this time. It is great if you can build in a quiet time in your afternoon as well. This is both for yourself and the children. Time for naps, going for a walk, personal reading, listening to music or audiobooks, a time of reflection and memorization. The rest of the afternoon will be taken up with creativity and individual interests with a focus on construction skills. This is also a good time for family errands, family outings, and or a visit to the local library. Rhonda is looking through a bird field guide and trying to spot birds with toy binoculars. Tom and the younger brothers are building with their blocks and construction sets and later have plans to build a fort. All three of them will also practice their piano lesson. Nathaniel is reading his creation magazine and will practice his guitar. Later, they will play a board game together. Sue has gone running, and later will have her dance class. Marcy is curled up on the couch with a good mystery novel. She will prepare supper. William is out tinkering with his car, putting in new speakers. He will also spend some time learning Spanish. Samantha has gone to her lifeguarding course. She will practice her violin and work through her anatomy flashcards. These are just snippets, revealing some possibilities. You don't have to do any of them, and your schedule may look completely different. Remember, find what fits your family and disregard the rest.
Well, folks, my father taught me something when I was younger. He taught me some Latin. So I'm going to practice it on you tonight. I'm going to say, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. And that is translated, par ma faute, par ma telegon faute. Oh, sorry. Well, that's how I was taught that. It means I goofed. And that's exactly what happened tonight. So that's the bad news. But I've got some good news for you. The very man that put together this wonderful presentation tonight happens to be the video editor who just happens to have a copy of that video. So I'm sure when we send him the recording of this evening's oops, that he is going to replace it with the full thing. And let me tell you how I did that. There were a couple of little children making some noises. So while I was in the process of muting everybody, I muted myself, which is why you did not hear a piece of Gary's presentation tonight. So as I said, it's a faux pas, but it's at least one that can be rectified because indeed, Gary does have that. I should also introduce Gary as one of our facilitators, and he is covering a lot of territory. He goes right to the, almost from the bottom of the province. He does the south and a lot of Calgary area. And then he travels all the way up to Fort Vermilion high level and works with me in that particular area of the province. So I introduced everyone except myself. If you're not aware of who I am, I'm Léo Gaumont, and I guess I have the privilege, the honor of being able to be the grand poobah of this here outfit, or shall we say, I'm the Director of Education Unlimited. That was an excellent presentation, Gary. Thank you very much. And again, just keep repeating. You'll find what fits your family and disregard the rest. And that little thing in the end when he was talking about all the things that all the children were doing, I don't know if you were counting children, but that was a big family. And they, they obviously occupied their time well. Now, don't mistake the idea that everybody has to be super busy with all these kinds of things. And Gary alluded to that. He says, you don't have to do all these things, just little snippets of what can indeed happen. I think what he was doing is he was simply taking something that we have truly complicated. It's called education. And somehow we've converted that into this thing called school. And we've confused it. We think that if it's, if it's education, it's got to be school. If it's school, it's got to be education. I got proof that that's not the case. I think if you look at the spelling, those words aren't spelt the same. They must mean something different. So Gary is saying, just live life, enjoy it. And you will find that learning is such a natural thing that indeed you're just going to love it and you're going to enjoy the family. Just out of curiosity, and I'm not seeing everybody, so I guess it's not going to work too well, but I'm interested in how many people here are home educating for the very first time. Oh, so you can wave at us if that's the case. Well, oh, there's a yes, there's a me. Okay, that's good. I see a lot of you are employing the chat thing, and that's important. I'm going to go there. And indeed, it was going on. I actually slipped out, well, not slipped out, to the side, so you didn't have to see me as part of that. And that's when I muted myself. I'm sure my wife sometimes probably wishes she could push that same button, but that's another story again. Okay, you'll see there that what we have is we welcomed you to the Education Limited Zoom event. I'm going down the chat. We do have a website that has lots and lots and lots of stuff. This particular video is being recorded. It takes about a week, right, Mike? By the time you get it and Gary gets it, now cuts the video out and puts the one with all the audio back in. It's roughly a week before it gets put up. And you can find that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's anywhere from 2 to 3 days to a week. It depends. Each one is a little bit different.
Okay.
Within a week, but within a week, it should be up.
Good. And it goes up to our YouTube channel. And you'll see that last week's topic, the high school credit and post-secondary admission, can be viewed there. I don't know if you can actually copy that link. I just put it in there. And I did ask you to mute yourself and to use the chat function to communicate. We thank you for that, but just because we want to somehow be able to manage this a little bit. And if we're all talking, we oftentimes forgot to put ourselves back on mute and we're back to the same old thing. I was reminded several times by a lot of people who were saying the video audio has gone away. The sound is gone. You may have muted Gary. Can't hear you. EU is muted. Gary's sound is gone. Muted. Can't hear anything about a minute now. Need subtitles. And I'm going, mea culpa. That was my fault entirely. So my apologies. And as I said, you will find that the one that goes up on YouTube will have the full version with all the audio. Right, Gary? Wave at us. Show okay, there we go. All right, and I said you went mute, and so did the video. Right, that was my doing. When the person screen sharing the video's on microphone is muted, right, somebody else is telling me. I got it. Yes, me. I'm first time. Okay, well, I feel properly chastised. And I most certainly deserved that. That was an oops. Okay, so let's get the questions. So can you please recommend books, textbook to start kindergarten education? What subject are taught in kindergarten in Canada? Well, let me be very bold with you. I don't care. what subjects are taught to kindergarten in Canada. Find what fits your family and disregard what goes on in kindergarten in Canada. You see, one of the biggest problems is, and I'm going to address this, and I'm going to have other people answer these questions, but this is one of my favorite drum to beat. And that is, we have all been trained, indoctrinated, brainwashed, if you will, to believe that there's such a thing as a standard in education. There is no such a thing. In my 45 years of education experience, I have had tens of thousands of students, and I can honestly tell you, I have never actually ever found a standard one. Indeed, I have never found two of them alike. Truth is, there's 7 billion plus people on earth and no two are alike. How can we even imagine that anybody could come up with something so asinine as a standard? What works for Steve is a complete failure for Tom. And so what you want to do is simply find something that works. As soon as they get all excited about reading, find something they enjoy. If all of a sudden you start teaching a little girl about reading and it involves auto mechanics, it's not going to work. So let's find what works. And we probably repeat Gary's theme over and over again this evening, but you can indeed find what fits you. So to answer that question is that and Gary alluded to this, we're not going to take life and chop it up into little disconnected pieces called subject. That's the school's approach. I'm not berating that. I'm saying that's not what we should be focusing on. If we have something in science that we're interested in learning, let's learn it. Needless to say, you can't learn science if you don't have certain levels of communication. You can't do more advanced science if you haven't got certain skills in mathematics. They're all related. In life, real life, the life that you and I live every day, our lives and our days are not broken up into subjects in 1 hour chunks. That just doesn't exist in the real world. So what we're trying to do is simply say, we are unschoolers, take a look at what school does and do everything you can to avoid doing the same thing at home. Because it doesn't always work at school. Sometimes it does, oftentimes it doesn't. It most certainly will not work at home if it never worked at school in the first place. It's the change of venue isn't going to change a bad idea. Or if you will, a bad idea brought home is just a bad idea at home. So remember that when you're starting them from scratch, always just go with the flow. Get to learn them and their gifts and talents and interests, and you'll have so much fun. Matter of fact, you'll probably end up learning right along with them. All right. I hope I answered that question, and I open that up to my other very, very worthy and professional facilitators. If you want to add to that, please do. So this is your moment. As soon as I seen the green box, I know you're talking. Who's next? Isla, I can see you're chomping at the bit. Go ahead.
Well, I think I agree with everything Leo said, and I think in kindergarten, it's just another year to play, and children's work is play. And the things that kids learn by playing is magnanimous. You can't quantify how much a child will learn just by playing. And like Leo said as well, when you see interest in the kids, when you see interest in the child, like they're wanting to count and do numbers, looking at letters, sounding out words they want to read, you jump on that and you follow them and you start reading when they're ready. There's no set, we need to push them way back. I say this to many, many, many families, and it's something that Leo said, I don't know, years ago, don't compare yourself to other families. Don't push your kids. Don't push them before they're ready, and don't hold them back. So if they want to go forward, if they're only 5 and they want to be doing, long division because they're ready for that, go for it. If they're not ready to learn their ABCs, don't push them. And so follow the lead of the child and everybody will be happy. And when, this is another thing that I tell people who have little ones as they're starting out, if you have tears, frustration, pushback, any of that kind of stuff with yourself or your child, I'm thinking more of the child here, but sometimes moms have a lot of tears as well, when that's a big red flag. It's a red flag that your child is not ready for what you're putting in front of them, because children are natural learners. They're naturally curious and they want to learn stuff. And when they have a moment where they don't want to, stop, because the learning stops anyways, and wait for a better day. So that would be my quick advice for little people.
I'm really encouraged to hear Isla quoting me. I figured, wow, that's good. That's good. I must have had some effect. That's right. Don't push, don't hold back, and don't compare. The other thing too is we're talking about, the way the school does. We have this idea that every child is ready to read at 6. That's absolutely not true. And if they're not ready to read at 6, if you try to make them read, you actually are inflicting more damage than anything else. If you wait until they're ready, and I'm going to tell you the truth, that can be 8, 9, 10. For dyslexics, I often tell parents, don't worry about it until they're gone through puberty, and then they learn to read. I can guarantee you this, I have never seen a home-educated child who cannot read. And when they're ready to read, it's overnight. They just sit down and boom, they're reading. That's all there is to it. So again, it can be quite late. I have to admit that when that girl still wasn't reading at 17, I was starting to get a little nervous myself that we may have had our first ever. But by the time I went and visited that same young lady in the spring, she was sprawled out on the couch reading a very advanced novel. Once again, when they're ready, it's overnight. So I can honestly say I don't know of any failures. Now, I tell a funny story about that, and I said, everybody learns to read because there's nothing that is scarier than a mad mother. All right, so now that we've gone past that one, let's look at the next question. Can you recommend, okay, here's another one, the next one. How do you tell a child who is dreaming about going to school that she will stay home and do homeschooling? Could someone share those experiences? I am going to ask Michael to tell us a story about his daughter that really, really, really wanted to go to school. Are you catching that one, Mike? I can see you got a frown on your face. You remember, you just had to get her something.
I don't recall offhand, actually.
Well, let me tell Mike's story. He's got 11 children, so you can understand if he's forgotten which child was which. But one of his little daughters was just adamant. She just wanted to go to school so bad. And they tried to reason with her. And they tried to console her about the fact that she was going to be home educated. And she would have nothing to do with it. She wanted to go to school so bad it wasn't even funny. Until they discovered that all she really wanted was what school kids got when they were going to school. The minute they bought her very own little backpack, that was the last they heard about her going to school. She wasn't interested in actually going to school. She actually wanted a backpack. You remember that, Mike? Mike,
I know that the girls all have backpacks, but I don't particularly remember that particular story.
Well, you're the one who told me the story, so you better not have made it up. Anyway, that's worthwhile saying is that sometimes the children have a different, you got to get in there and find out what is it. I mean, they want to go to school, they want to be with friends. You supply them with a whole bunch of other friends. There's lots this year, lots and lots and lots of home educating families, and many of them brand spanking new for the first time. So you will not be alone. And all of us are going to be working very hard this year to try and encourage those families. So that's one experience that I have to share. Does anybody else have an experience? The Rosendals, you guys, you have lots of children as well. Did you have one of yours wanting to go to school? And how did you deal with that? They're looking for the mute button or the unmute button. I can tell. Well, while they're discovering that, there we go. Okay.
Are we on? No.
You're on.
First thing about home educators is there's nothing normal about anybody or anything.
Okay.
So you roll with the punches. But most children love nothing more than to just be with their parents. I think if you if you give that some attention and show them that's what it's about, they'll agree with that. And it depends how we've, I guess, portrayed school all along for them. If it was something that would be more exciting for them than home, for example, yeah, then that could be an issue. But for the most part, home is where they're free. Home is where they can be themselves. Home is where it's natural. Home is not necessarily a place where there's no bullying, but it's more controllable than at school. Yeah,
Answer. Press this one.
You learn to deal with each other. So, and I think if we're excited, if our children see that we're excited to have them home, that will have a positive influence on their thought processes in the whole thing. So, if the whole sentiment is, oh, I can't wait till they can be gone again so I can do my own thing, that's kind of counterproductive. But I don't believe too many of us have that thought process if we're entertaining home educating. So that ought to help.
Okay. All right. Sharon and Crystal, jump in anytime. The whole works of you here. You're all here to help me. Any other comments on how to deal with the child that has, if you will, conceptualized some good thing about school? Somehow they've imagined that the school is a really, really good thing. My last recommendation is ask them what it is about school that they're looking forward to. And you may find that it's a very, very simple thing, like the backpack that Mike forgot about. Okay, now the next question we have here is, how do you tell, I have a 15-year-old who wanted the high school experience. School started this week and she missed 2 days already. She would be perfect for this, but I know it's not going to work. She's been in outreach for 1.5 years already and has always had trouble keeping up for various reasons. How can I convince her to try homeschooling? I also am very against the social studies curriculum they were pushing on them. I really want to take her out. Well, folks, I am going to repeat something that Gary said very quickly in passing, but I think it's worth actually addressing this. You are the boss. You are in authority. I had a very, very simple rule that as long as my children lived under my roof, they would have to abide by my rules. If they didn't like my rules, they can find their own roof. Now, maybe it was an idle threat, I have to admit, but it did remind them of one thing, that ultimately somebody has to take authority. And since it was the children who were born to the parents and not the parents born to the children, I think it's fair to say that the children should be in submission, or if you will, just take the advice of their parents. That's why you have that authority, and you need to sometimes flex that muscle. I know that at one point in time, I entertained the same thing. And at one time I even went so far as to tell my daughter, gave her the 25 reasons why not to do something, and the 4 reasons why I could think of to do it. And I thought, there, I've provided her with all the logic, and in the end, she decided to do the very thing I did not want her to do. That's when I decided that maybe sometimes 15-year-olds just lack the wisdom to be able to make decisions that are actually going to affect them for the rest of their lives. So parents sometimes, and especially when the children are getting 14, 15, especially 15, there are 2 times. When the boys turn 13, they fall into a sort of a intellectual comatose. The only 2 subjects they can do well is eating and sleeping. Girls, when they get to be 15, friends means everything. And that's probably the only reason why she's going there. You pointed out that she's having difficulty. You don't want her to do this, that, and whatnot. Well, the reality is that, again, like the younger one, a lot of these issues are the same. Like the little one that wants to go to school, she's got this idea that school's got all these wonderful things. When you ask her what it is about school that she really wants, she's not likely going to say, oh, I love biology, or, you know, the English is so stimulating. That's just not the answers that they're going to give. It's probably going to be everything to do with friends, everything to do with having fellowship and so on. Those things that can be provided out of school. I'm going to read this over again just to make sure that I'm not missing something. Anybody else want to take a stab at that while I read it over again? Okay, I'm going to say, but I know it's not going to work. You don't know until you've tried it. And it's true that if she's already been, now she's 15, if I'm correct, she probably hasn't been to high school at all, which is very good. Let me give you another little warning here. If she goes to school, even for one semester, and she earns, let's say 20 credits, those 20 credits are now on her transcript. If she decides after a semester, that's it, I'm done with this stuff, I'm out of here, she has a transcript, but it's incomplete. So it comes with the stigma of dropout or quitter or failure, which is not necessarily true, but unfortunately, if there's a transcript there, that can indeed spawn those kind of thoughts and sentiments. If there is no transcript there, that is that she's never gained any credit, and I have to point out that through Education Unlimited, we do not, I'll repeat, not do public programming. We don't do government programming. We don't do credits. We don't do diplomas. We just don't do that. We do an alternative. And for those of you who weren't here last week, the alternative simply requires post-secondary institutions to use alternate admission criteria. It works. I can't say we have no failures. We don't know. Everyone reports to us their good things. Nobody reports failures. So, to the best of my knowledge, everyone finds their place eventually one way or the other. So, that's an alternative to what is being offered at the school. She would be perfect for this. Sure, she would be, because now we would allow her to do what interests her. Now, she's been in outreach, so I'm assuming that she's been at home for a year and a half and has had trouble keeping up for various reasons. The main reason why she's having trouble keeping up is because somebody who is completely unrelated, who does not know her at all in any way, shape, or form, has determined what she needs to learn in math or English or social or science. How does that make any sense? They don't know her. Bring her home, get to know her, get to know what makes her tick, get to know her gifts and talents and abilities and interests. Go with that. And you will find that a lot of those rough edges that you're concerned about will get smoothed over fairly quickly. And how can you convince her to try homeschooling? Well, bribery always works, but I'm sure there's other ways. But sometimes you just have to stand up and say, that's our call, not yours. And so parents sometimes just have to just flex that parental muscle. Don't buy into the worldly idea that somehow an 8-year-old has the capacity to reason in an adult way. And 15-year-olds, okay, they're a little older than an 8-year-old, but they still don't have the life experience to be able to make those decisions. That's a parental responsibility. And I dare say that if you are convinced in your own heart that you should be bringing her home and educating her there, then to do likewise is probably not going to bode well for you. Anybody else want to? Okay, Isla, I see you're green there.
I would just say when our youngest was 15 and she's the youngest, like there's a large age difference between her and her older siblings, and she was the only kid at home, and she begged to go to school, and I want to be with my friends, I want to make new friends. And she had her 15-year-old reasoning about why all the reasons that going to school would be so great. And of course, we had our reasons why school wouldn't be so great, and that wasn't going to be an option for our family. And we did pull the parent card and say, it's not going to work for us. That isn't an option. School is not an option for us. And it wasn't easy, and it was tumultuous in my heart, because every parent wants to have a happy kid, and she was not a happy kid at home, and there was lots of stuff going on for her. But what it came down to for my husband and I and our daughter, it was to sit down and to say, come, let us reason together. And it took us a long time to be reasonable. And I had to give some of my expectations or my picture of what life was going to be like with my 15-year-old at home. I had to give up some of that, and she had to give up some of her things, and we had to kind of meet in the middle. But we came up with a plan, and we said, you know, what is it that you want to have? Like, what would be a great education for you? She felt as though the school was going to be so much better, and she was going to get this great education, and she was going to be able to learn all these subjects that she's not able to learn at home. And we just made a list about what would it take for you to feel like you've got a really good education. And we came up with a list together, and it was really like literally a checklist. When you do this, 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 and she had lists of the things that she wanted to achieve. And in the end, I said to her, like, and then we had this list, and I said, wow, so your friends could be graduating high school and they would have a high school diploma, which doesn't give them anything. And you could graduate from high school and you could have one semester of university. Wow, what would you rather have? And she was very motivated. She's very competitive, and she was very motivated to have that university experience. So she did a lot of Athabasca courses and basically got her first semester of university by the time, and she was so motivated that she finished the list by the time she was 17. So when the list became a cumulative project between her parents and her, she bought into it and just was dedicated to get the list accomplished. And it might not have, like, that wasn't exactly how I wanted to do school with her. That wasn't exactly my ideal, but that was our coming to, let's come, let us reason together. And that's the reason, that the place of reason that we came to. And in the end, we restored relationship, we maintained relationship, and I think it was a win-win. So that's my personal story. So if that's helpful at all.
Well, thank you. I think it was very, very helpful. And I think one of the things that she hit upon there, and I'm going to reiterate this, is that what the 15-year-old was trying to flex some adult muscles. And what Isla did there is she just played that card. She says, okay, if you want to flex some adult muscles, let's do some adult reasoning. Let's do some adult negotiating, okay? And here's a couple of things. Going to school is not on the table. That's off. So let's work around that. And I think that was very good, Isla. Thank you for sharing that one, because that's precisely what we need to be doing. The other thing I want to point out is that at 15 years old, I am not sure that the students are actually able to conceptualize the negatives. When you ask them why they want to go to school, they'll tell you it's friends, it's fun, it's an experience, it's this and that. They forget that it's also peer pressure and bullying and condescension and belittling, and it goes on and on and on. They don't have the ability to understand that. When you tell them that's what it's going to be about, it goes in one ear and out the other. They've already formed the idea that school's wonderful, and we know, you know, it's not. So I like that pull the trump or the parent card thing, and that's exactly what I think we need to do. We got to understand that as long as those children are under a roof, they are our responsibility. And ultimately, because God's given them to us, we will answer for each one of those children ourselves. We're not going to be able to blame the school or the church or the government or dads. It's your responsibility in particular. You're not even going to be able to blame your wives. So, you know, something to consider. Sometimes we need to really stop and think about, you know, put some sense into this. Got to remember though, this is in the midst of 100 years of the normalization of school. And in the last 50 or 40 or 30, the last 5 years in particular, we aren't even allowed to think differently. We have to toe the party line. And, you know, if you really wonder why we're looking at the crazy world that we're looking at today, I wonder if it's got anything to do with the fact that the school has determined what everybody's going to learn, what they're going to believe, what they're going to do, all those kinds of things. I think it's time for parents to step in and just simply say, I'm the boss. And incidentally, as Education Limited, that's precisely how we see you. We're not coming over to tell you what to do. We're coming over to encourage you and to equip you and to enable you to do just that. You be the boss. Alice, you want to say something? You're still green. You want to add something to that? No? Okay. All right. My green box is in the wrong place. It's supposed to be me because I'm talking. So even Zoom doesn't tell the truth. All right. Now, is there, let me see if there's another question here. Oh, there's one. Okay, there's a thank you. You're welcome. We love being thanked for doing something. Okay, this question scares the heck out of me when I was asked. Does it mean you will be homeschool kids till you are 60? Oh boy. Meaning not able to get a job and basically be with the kids 24/7. Do you have anything to say to that as I'm panicking? Well, okay. If you've ever watched that movie A Bug's Life, they say, do not panic. We are trained professionals. We are here to help you. Okay, so I stole a line from a movie, but that's true. We are indeed not trained professionals. We are learned professionals. We know because we've been there, we've done that, we bought the t-shirt, we've got the hat, we know what works and what doesn't work. And I'll tell you what is the first reason why home education fails. It's if parents fail to be parents. Then it's pretty well a guarantee that things are going to go south. If the kids are in control, you're not the boss, and that's just a perversion of the whole process. Once again, it's you that gave birth to the children, not the other way around. There's no doubt that the parents or the children made you parents, which you weren't before, but that's a different twist. Now, one of the things about home education is that we actually do treat 15-year-olds like they're 15 years old. The school just hardly changes its approach. Their children go through puberty and then they maintain a sort of a dependent infancy all the way down to grade 12. And then we cut them loose and we wonder why they go crazy or they go to university and completely bomb. Because really, we've never given them a true opportunity to be adults. So we find that since we allow the children to be comfortable in their skin, that we allow them to grow naturally, we go through puberty with them. We go through all these stages with them. We grow right along with them. We've just got a 20-year, advantage over them, maybe, or more, depending. But we still are smarter than them, and so we are the guides, not the other way around. I find that the children that are home educating, especially those that started from the beginning, from let's say what we would refer to as grade 1, or when they're legally old enough to register or whatever, they are done completely. I just had a conversation today with a dad who phoned me, and his 14-year-old son just challenged the Athabasca University English 255 entrance exam and got 87%. He was proud because he also did that test and he got 89. So he figures he's at least got 2% over his son. Well, that's good. What to do next? Go to Athabasca University. That's what you do next. He's already proven that he's capable. He's done the very exam that he needs to prove his proficiency. So you go. So our biggest problem isn't that they stay with us until they're 35, 40 and playing Nintendo in the basement. That's not how we raise them. We raise them to be productive citizens and responsible adults. And so by the time they get there, well, you'll like this. We call it the official home education diploma. It's also known as the driver's license. Once they get that, they are usually on their way out. Now, you might be able to keep the oldest one home for a while, but once the oldest one finally manages to break that string and move on, the rest of the birds just start flying one after the other. Right, folks? We got a lot of people out there that's experienced that way. You know what I'm talking about. You can see those Rosendals with the 9 kids going like this. So is Mike doing the same thing. He's learned that too, don't we all? But it's, you know, it's not that they're going to stay home. Being home educated, just simply allowing them to grow up in keeping with the growing up that they're doing. By the time they're 16, I have to say, my 17-year-old home educated since forever granddaughter is far more mature than a lot of grown women that I know. Seriously. It's immaturity is rarely a product of home education. It's a product of a school system that will not allow those kids to grow up. All right, that's my rant. Okay, what about the other people there? Why don't you put in your 2 bits worth?
Maybe just add, Leo, that there is a large homeschooling community as well that families can tap into, and so they're not alone, and so there are support groups and ways to get connected, and as they find themselves part of that larger group as well, that sometimes that gives the kids their identity and a place to kind of settle in as well.
And that's so very true. Now, here's one thing we don't do. We don't put those groups on, and I'll tell you why. The minute we start doing that, we start looking more and more like school. And my objective is to avoid anything that even comes close to looking like school. But we do have localized things. I know that Isla, as an example, has a real party of people up in Grand Prairie there, and they love getting together, and everybody knows everyone. And I love stopping into that group because it's just got such a familial feel to it that everybody is there and they know each other's names and so on. So you're absolutely right, Gary. There's all kinds of groups, agencies. I know that Nadia, who's not here this evening, she's got a group in Edmonton, and I forget to mention this, but Nadia and Isla have a Facebook group. Help me with the name again. Is it Unschooling Families of Education Limited? Okay. And so, you know, we certainly encourage you to join that as well. So the vast majority of the issues that you're going to have with teenagers, it's got nothing to do with academics. Actually, they don't care. I taught high school for 25 years. Let me tell you the mindset of a 15-year-old. They're coming to school for friends. Outside of that, they say 3 more stinking years and we're out of here. That's the mentality that they come with. And so then we as teachers, paid professional, you know, highly educated by the state teachers, our job is to try and maintain a bunch of lies like you can't be successful without a high school diploma. You know, you'll never get into university if you don't have the credit and all that kind of junk. That's what I had to do during my day job. And at night, I was home educating my own children. So it goes to show you how much I believed in that system, but I had to do my job. So is there an alternative? Absolutely. And what I love about it is 2 things. Home education allows us to be a family. And so we have, and still to this day, and my children are probably, well, I have to say they're probably older than a lot of you sitting here today, and they're still each other's best friends. They still love getting together and doing things together because that's how they grew up. Is that normal? Or is going to school with a bunch of friends that vaporize, disappear at the end of grade 12? Some of them might hang on for a while, but it goes away. So the whole idea is relationship, fellowship, which is the most important thing in life. It's all about relationship. And the most important relationship of all has to be parents and children. All right. I can go on, as you know, I can really chit chat.
Can I add to that for a moment?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So yeah, it can seem daunting, but family is where it's at, and that is pretty much all we're going to have, or all we're going to have. Those are the ones that always will hold our backs if something ever comes up. So the more we invest in our children now, the more likely they are to be invested in us later on. And most likely we're going to need their help if all is well, and we should be able to appreciate that from each other. So it's also a bit of a long-term vision. And so it's good to ask those questions now. we have to be able to set those goals and reason them in our minds at the same time. So I don't know who else I would want around me when I'm 60 than my family. I mean, there's other people that I appreciate, but they're still the closest. And so what we put into them now, we probably typically would reap later on.
That's right.
Sounds scary, but
stripes. Yeah, including stripes, because if we teach our children to be independent, critical thinking individuals, which we really should be doing, the school is just not doing that. If you hear the talk about, critical thinkers, that is not true. To the school, critical thinkers are those people that are repeating the narrative. That's it. If we teach our own kids to be independent, critical thinkers, it will come back to bite you. I can show you a few bite marks on my rear end. You probably don't want to see it, but seriously, that's how I've trained my children. And even as adults, even as older adults, middle-aged adults, every once in a while, they still bite me in the rear. And I'm so thankful for it, because I know they're not just going around like, idle thinking puppets. Go ahead there, Rosenthal. You want to add something to that?
oh, that's good.
Okay.
You really start to appreciate family. I think the more you're together, it's tougher than you like sometimes. It's tougher than you want it to be sometimes. But you come through it, and it builds more solidarity. It builds closeness. You really get to know each other. And we live in a world where typically people are 100 miles wide and a half-inch deep. And the only place where we can really entrench ourselves, because you're not going to kick your kids out typically. You got to learn to deal with each other, and those are life skills that they take with them for the rest of their lives. And they're better off learning that now. Snowflakes is not good for us, so to speak, right? So there's that side to, dig once in a while, and let there be some frustrations once in a while, and then work them out. Don't run away from each other. But family is about the only one you can't run away from forever, anyways. So it's well worth the effort.
We've all lived long enough to know that friends have come and friends have gone, but family stays forever. It really, really does. And if there's anything, the deepest hurt you're ever going to have is a rejection by family members. So, that obviously is the most important unit on earth. And I think that we are failing to truly invest in it. Now, home educators, they're investing it. But let me explain a little something about that. See, in the world, you go to invest in some kind of an investment, an exempt market thing or something. And a good return is 5%. If you're getting 10%, like, wow, are you ever lucky? But on a biblical basis, it talks about the investments returning 30, 60, and 100-fold. That's not parts of one, that's times. So the minute that you gave birth to that child, you were forced, when you looked at that child, you immediately recognized that this was going to require a sacrifice. Now, here again, we have a choice. We can choose to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of our children, or we can turn around and sacrifice our children for the sake of ourselves. I don't know if you noticed, but when the schools were shut down, the biggest concern was the fact that it was going to crowd the jobs of the working mothers and fathers, that was it. So we were sacrificing our children for ourselves. I know they twisted it around and say, well, if we both work, we make more money and we can buy our kids more stuff. There's one thing and one thing only that children want. And I don't care if they're 5 or 15, they want loving parents. Nothing else matters. And at the end of the day, when you're sitting there in your deathbed, ask yourself what matters then. And it's the same thing. That's what matters. So here's what I've learned. I invested, I sacrificed for my children. And some people said that I went overboard. Okay, in some respects, maybe. Still, the kids think it was an under effort. That's typical of children, right? But I can tell you this, of all the investments that I have ever made, that by far is the best investment of all, because it doesn't only pay in multiples, it pays in eternity. And I think that's important, ultimately important. All right. Well, I hit somebody's nerve anyways. I appreciate the clap. Okay. Any other thing? I think we've gone overboard. We must have had a real good time tonight because I just noticed that we are 8:14, and I said we'd be between 7 and 8. We started late, and this is sort of contrition for my faux pas this evening. So we got a few minutes of time out of this. Unless there's some other comment that someone wants to make, you're all very welcome. And I want to thank those other contributors. And even though Sharon is kind of in the dark there and didn't contribute, I know that she's been here all along. I think it looks like, I can't see anymore, but I think that Crystal must have left. We still have Gary and we still have Mike and the Rosendals, and I thank you, and Isla. And I thank you all for joining us this evening. I think that the staff enjoyed this. I think that this is an opportunity for us to share on a more of a, I don't know, a corporate basis, I guess you can say. And I'm not talking about corporation as much as I am a community of people, community of like-minded people with the same heartbeat. We desire to help our families to come to the knowledge of the truth, to escape the mindset, the ideology, the paradigm of school, bring the children home and invent a new paradigm of unschooling, which essentially can be summarized in this one sentence: just be a family. And what else? Gary, you get to say it one more time. You said it enough times tonight. Go ahead.
Find and work through your family and disregard the rest.
Amen. All right, everyone. On that note, we're going to thank you all for joining us this evening. God bless you all. And again, if you're looking for more answers, lots of videos on YouTube, lots of videos on our webpage. And if you're not already home educating, do consider it. And if you want to look at what we have to offer, the website's probably the best place to go. God bless you all. Have a super good evening. And we will see you next Thursday if you join us again. Bye for now.